And we're live here to talk once again about everybody's favorite stuff, everything and whatnot, as long as it's semi-car related. How you doing
Semi-cars.
this evening? Well, not semi-cars, but quasi-car related. How you guys doing tonight?
Can't talk about semis. I want to talk about semis.
You can, but they're not on the agenda. You gotta move to have them put on next week's agenda.
I can't tell you. She prohibited me from discussing how I've been feeling lately.
You're
John,
supposed
I
to
think
talk
you
about
got
your
another
feelings.
podcast.
Yeah, that might be a different, unless you're feeling automotive things.
No.
Okay, so which one of you put manual transmissions and car dealers on
I
the
did.
agenda?
Wasn't
So
me.
tell me about this. Like, what's the relationship? Can you even get a manual transmission from a new car dealer anymore?
Well, it's funny. And my brother has pretty much always driven manual transmission cars. His Mustang was automatic, his T-Bird was automatic, and I think his Dodge Shadow was automatic. But he's a Miata GTI guy, things like that. And he decided the GTI he has is too old and time to buy another car. He went to he's been looking at Z4s and Boxsters and all kinds of things, but he went to the Mazda dealership because he wanted a 2-seat convertible sports car with a manual transmission. Well, this Mazda dealership sells Miatas, and Miatas come with manual transmissions. And people go, save the manuals, save the manuals. And we all know I could care less if we save the manuals or not. But, my brother wanted a manual transmission car. Mazda sells them. And that's great. You know what the problem is? When they went to appraise his GTI, nobody in the dealership knew how to drive a manual. Not a single salesperson, not a single manager. Nobody there knew how to drive a manual transmission. So they dinged him on the trade-in value of his car because they couldn't insure it properly right. They said, take him for a damn ride. Somehow he ended up getting that number renegotiated a little bit higher to where he was happy. But you wonder why manual transmissions are going away. The freaking dealerships can't sell them because they don't know how to drive them. Back in 2008, I went to buy a Dodge Ram 1500 and I found one with a 6-speed manual. And I'll go, great. I like this thing. When we walked out to the car or to the truck, the salesman said, well, let me pull it out. He opened up the door and he goes, this is a manual transmission. I said, yeah, I know. That's why I want it. He goes, I can't drive a manual. Can you pull it out? I said, but you just told me that I can't pull it out and pull it off the lot. He goes, well, I can't drive it. You've got to. People, if you want to save manuals, maybe we need to talk to the people that sell the damn cars and teach them to drive manuals. It was annoying to me that, number one, they're going to ding you because it's a manual because nobody can drive it. From a dealership that sells one of the few remaining manual transmission cars. I can totally understand it if you went into a Jeep dealer, which I guess they do sell manual transmission Jeeps. If you went into insert car company that does not sell manual transmissions anymore, which is most of them. And, then maybe you can't, they couldn't give you a value, but I just said that kind of irked me that we can't expect manuals to survive and go on if the people selling them can't drive them. You know how I learned to drive a manual transmission?
Tell us.
I had my Dodge Omni 024, my first car. It was an automatic, and I wanted a pickup truck. And I found this great little 1984 Mazda B2000 Sundowner. Great little truck. but it was a manual transmission. My father doesn't particularly care for manuals. He knows how to drive them and stuff, but so he didn't want to teach me to drive it. The salesman taught me to drive that truck. We went out and spent an hour, hour and a half until I could operate the truck without killing myself. And there, guess what? He got a sale because he could teach me to drive a manual. Maybe somebody would want to buy a manual Miata, but they don't know how to drive a manual, and none of their friends know how to drive manuals. You need a salesman to teach you to do it, or somebody. But like I said, that's why I put it on the list. I just found it utterly repulsive that one of the best-selling manual transmission cars in the country, you go to a dealer and nobody in the dealership knows how to drive it.
Well, it's funny.
I feel like we've stumbled on a business opportunity.
No,
teaching
because
car salesmen to drive.
Yeah, the No Driving Gloves Manual Driving School.
That's they've got the Model T driving schools. There's probably a lot of people who would enjoy the opportunity to learn to drive a traditional 3 on the tree, 4 on the floor. But the prejudice against a clutch pedal is nothing new. One of the last stories I wrote for Classic was about a 60 or 61 Chrysler Newport that was ordered new with a 3-speed. And the dealer demanded a $500 down payment on the car, which was huge in those days, because they were convinced they weren't going to be able to sell it. Because even though the 3-speed was the, quote unquote standard transmission, virtually every one of those cars was built with the push button torque flight. And they were convinced they were going to be saddled with this car they couldn't sell if this guy didn't take delivery. And it's still in the family. So obviously it was a good buy for them. But I think as soon as automatics became mainstream, that manuals started to become a demerit for used car sales, with the exception of the muscle car era, where the 4-speed was probably a leg up for a lot of those cars because it was expected.
Yeah. Actually, it does. I jokingly and not jokingly, it might actually be kind of fun to see what kind of interest there would be in actually having like an old time, like like the old chauffeur schools, right, that existed in the early 1900s, but teaching people how to drive.
You can't just throw that out there like the rest of us know what that means. The chauffeur schools that existed in the early 1900s. So
yeah, you know what it is, Dave. Come in.
Rolls-Royce still.
I have an inkling, but for the listeners who may not be as well versed in what Carter was doing in 1910.
Well, no. So there were actually schools that they were kind of mechanic / chauffeur schools, because no 2 cars were the same. Standardization did not exist at the time. So if you were going into the profession of being a mechanic / chauffeur, which was a pretty lucrative career at the time, you would go to one of these schools. There were a couple in Cleveland. There were numerous in Detroit. They were in the big cities. And you would basically learn about a variety of cars that they would have at the school, how to maintain them, fix them, and then also how to drive each one and understand how to drive early cars, especially with their differences in shifting styles, throttling, all the different things that are set up differently. But where I'm going with that is I wonder if there would be any interest in having a school that taught how to drive vehicles of many more eras. You could do some early cars, but you could also do cars of the mid-century that, teach people how to use stick shifts. And, teaching synchro, non-synchro shifting is, something that a lot of people find interesting, at least car people, but it might be kind of fun.
I don't think you can market it as a
Don't burst the bubble, John.
School to teach you how to drive a manual transmission, because number one, I just got done saying they're going to go away because the damn people selling them don't know how to drive them. But I think you could get away making it an experience, come for like, it's like a racing school or something, but come experience the cars of the past yourself. And you could have, a couple Model Ts for people to learn how to operate a Model T in the planetary transmission. And then you could have maybe something from the late 20s, early 30s. We're starting to get into traditional cars. Maybe you want something from the aughts where you're going to have a tiller or something. And,
there would be one of those.
All these different eras. And you could probably bring it up to almost the 90s, early 90s with, carburetors or whatever. But I think you could possibly make it an experience. I think enough people would be curious enough. Even non-car people might be curious enough to take part. But you might have to do it as a traveling show. I still have a friend. He used to own one of those high performance, not driving school, but high performance driving experiences where they would take.
Yep.
And he owned, a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and an R8 and a few other cars like that. And they would travel with 6 or 8 exotic cars and rent a parking lot somewhere. And everybody, you pay a couple $100 to experience that car. You might be able to do it. It would definitely have to be a road show because I don't think you could, unless you placed it in Vegas, you might get away with it in Vegas, but I don't know where else you might be able to position it that it would really take advantage.
Vegas East.
Atlantic City?
Nope.
And who the heck wants
Used to be Atlantic City, but Vegas East now exists somewhere else.
Where?
And I say that because I don't have to move.
Lexington, Kentucky?
Ooh, no. Nashville is now considered Vegas East.
That's sad.
Only to you Nashvilleites.
No, it's due to the tourism. Nashville is now, I don't know if it's the highest tourist destination east of the Mississippi, but it's close. Believe me, I work there. There's a lot of tourists.
Well, I kind of work in a tourist attraction.
I live 4
I work in
hours
an educational
from
institution.
And I can't figure out a thing that I really would want to drive to Nashville and do. I mean, I visited your museum and yeah, I did that, but I don't know how I could make a vacation out of it. I can't think of 7 days or 5 days worth of things to do in Nashville to make it a vacation.
It's because you're not a country music fan.
Or getting married.
I like Beyonce as much as the next guy.
Which is not all that much, probably. I mean, no, I don't have anything against her, but I mean, I just don't know too many people who are big fans. But I was there in like 7th or 8th grade, which was clearly pre-Vegas East days, and we stayed in some hotel across the street from the old L&N station. I thought it was charming. I mean, I had my fill of boots and country music pretty quick after, a day and a half. But we were only there for 2-3 days anyway. But it was a nice experience. It sounds like maybe it's a lot more built up and congested now.
Oh, don't. Yeah, you don't even want to come see it. It's nuts.
It's that American Pickers influence, isn't it?
I think they're part of the problem.
Yeah, they brought, Mike brought that store, put it in there, and everybody's just flocking to see the wares.
I mean, I'm betting the city fathers aren't seeing any of this as a problem.
Nope.
No, you know what gets
not to my understanding.
One thing that drives me crazy about driving through Nashville is you're coming in from the north on 65, I think it is. It could be 24. There's a sign that says there's a Love's gas station, big billboard for it, and you exit. And I've taken that exit 6-7 times. I have yet to ever find the damn Love's gas station.
You're talking about on the south side?
I don't know.
You were saying coming in north, right? Coming
Yeah.
northbound into the city. Yeah, I
Well,
live north of the city. I go south into the city.
yeah, that's what I mean. If I'm coming from Illinois back through Nashville,
Oh,
there,
okay.
there's a Love's exit, and I've never found that.
Oh, I know the exact one you're talking about. I believe it's Trinity Lane,
Is
65.
there
You
really a
get
gas
off.
station?
Yes, you need to go left under the viaduct of the 65 freeway, and it's maybe a quarter mile up on the right. And it's a very
Okay.
small one. It's not a big one.
Maybe that's it. I'm expecting one of the gargantuan, ones, not quite as big as a Bucky's, but
I think of Love's as a truck stop rather than a gas station. So that does give you the sense of the normal scale that they've got.
well, they use small trucks too.
Makes them look bigger.
Especially in the city. So anyway, sorry, I diverted.
That's okay. Well, now you have to tell us the story of how you learned to drive a manual transmission, Derek. Was it as interesting as your dad left you to the salesman?
No,
You want to
no.
know?
You want me to tell you a
Here's the
story
neat
all
thing
about
about
how my life got flipped, turned upside down?
Yeah.
they left you the keys to the brand new Porsche.
I thought it was going to be a
There's,
Bel Air.
there's never been a brand new Porsche in my world. Anyway, no, actually, Dave, it was the 1974 GTO. That
Oh,
was,
nice.
yeah, we got it done and driving and everything. And Dad was like, "Well, if it's gonna be your car, you got to learn how to drive a stick." So we just went and I don't remember if you ever visited my actual like childhood home. I don't remember if you ever stopped out there where Dad had the shop and everything.
I don't
But
think I have.
yeah, there's just kind of a side country road that runs along the property, and the first mile and a half or so is paved, and then it turns into dirt as it goes along the river. So that just became the mile and a half so of paved section became the test area or the training area. And the funniest part of the story is that, albeit it was a 1974 Pontiac GTO, you know, uh, kind of the end of that muscle car period, especially for the GTO, and it still, and Dave, you probably remember, it had an open rear end. It didn't have posi or anything like that. And so Dad pulled it off onto the grass for some reason, a road that no one goes down. He still decided to pull off to the side of the road for us to switch seats to drive. And so, I was probably what, 14 at the time. And he's like, all right. So he tells me, you got to let the clutch out. You got to put the gas, you got to balance it just right, and you'll get a feel for it. And so, of course, the first time I do it, a little too much gas, a little too quick off the clutch. And of course, the rear end the tire sitting on the grass just spins, just zzz, and, you know, grass and mud and everything just fling up all over the car. And the exact comment was, well, I guess you're washing it when we get home now. But the next time I let the clutch out and pushed the gas down, I did it more gently and got the car off and did pretty good. So you mess up once, you learn pretty easily.
And what a car to learn on, because is that a Muncie in that, or is that a Saginaw? I'm sorry, not a Saginaw, T10.
Wow. I don't remember what that had in it.
I think it might be back to Super T10s at that point. But anyway, those muscle car era 4 speeds, especially with a Hurst shifter, are just the sweetest driving manual transmission.
Oh yeah,
I
it was a
learned
great
to drive.
car.
I also learned to drive on a 4 on the floor, but mine was a 1986 F350 diesel stake bed that belonged to my employer in the summer of like 2000 because I was a maintenance guy at a youth camp. And they're like, "Can you drive a stick?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Hey, Ross, teach this guy how to drive a stick." And so this guy that's like 2 years older than me is like, "You're not going to break it. Just fool around till you figure it out." So like I get in and, like dump the clutch the first time. And it's like jackrabbiting forward and like the granny gear, like leaping forward 6 feet at a time. But I got the hang of it pretty quickly. And by the end of that summer, I could like, back it up a long curving driveway on a sand dune hill. So I did almost flip that truck over once, but that wasn't because I screwed up driving the stick. That was because I misjudged where the edge of the roadway was.
Oh
I-
yeah, that happens.
I would think learning to drive on a truck like that might be a little bit easier because it's like learning to drive a stick in a Viper. There's so much torque. If you let out the clutch gently enough, you should hardly have to give it any gas. It will just start moving.
It was very forgiving. Yeah. And a
Yeah.
truck like that, if it's empty, you almost always start it in second. So you're not going to stall it starting it in first any way.
I rented a U-Haul once. Jesus, had to be 90, 91. And I got in it and it was like this 76, 78 Ford, 1-ton pickup truck cab with the box on the back. And it was manual with the granny gear. And I think I destroyed that. The guy wasn't very happy when I brought it back, but not my problem.
That was practically the end of when you would encounter a clutch pedal in a U-Haul truck. Nowadays, that would be like business suicide for them.
Oh, yeah. Here's a story because it's John, and I've always got to have a story about something. That salesman that taught me how to drive the manual, I think I ended up buying 3 different cars off of him from 3 different dealerships. Well, I bought 2. And my girlfriend, who was at the time becoming my ex-girlfriend, got into a really lousy car deal, and I got her out of it. And he sold her a car, and he, she took off in it. And he said, "Who is she?" And I go, "Oh, she's my ex-girlfriend." And she went on to work. We were still living together, and I went in. I got back to the apartment, then the phone rang, and I answered. It was a salesman calling to ask her out. So I passed the message on to her, and I don't know if she ever went out with him or not, and I don't know whatever became of him. But he was.
You should have come on. Change that to, and now they're married with 3 kids.
No, because she's still a friend of mine. I still know her, and we had lunch 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. But
no. Either my exes absolutely despise me and would light me on fire, or we're friends. So we get along. Or they insult me on Facebook.
John inspires deep passions in other people.
Yeah, my ex-wife had probably one of the best comebacks to one of my posts ever on Facebook this week. And she got complimented by many people. Thought it was
including
funny.
John.
Well, I didn't say anything because I posted it with the intention I'm not going to respond to anybody who responds to this because I know who they will be. And sure enough, I knew exactly who they will be, other than her, who never posts on Facebook. And she kind of said that was the reason, one of the reasons she's glad she divorced me. It's not the reason she's glad she divorced me, but I'm sure it was one of them.
Wow.
So, well, we know that what motivates John in the garage is spite, but what motivates you in the garage, Derek? Because I could use some motivation.
Oh, spite. I thought you said spike. I was like, wait, you think he's got a spiked drink? Like,
no, just a guy in the corner with a spike that pokes him if he stops working.
That's what I need. I need one of those. Get to work. Sorry, what was your question, Dave?
The question is what motivates you in the garage? Because John provided this little article with the 6 points of motivation, and I found a couple of them kind of useful, and I wondered if you had.
I believe Derek provided that article.
Oh, did you provide? I'm sorry. I'm attributing
I
to good
think I did.
ideas.
It's been so long I don't remember, and I don't even remember what's on that list.
Oh, well, I'd be happy. I have it open here. I could run through them really quick. So, first is budget 30 minutes a day. Second is focus on one thing at a time. Third is be realistic. That sounds like terrible advice. 4, set up a support system. 5, make progress visible, even when it's not. And 6, start at the start, which I take it means that there will be an obvious place where you start picking at any given project, and you should begin with that. And I think that ties into staying focused. But what I really found was a good idea was the 30 minutes a day advice, which I could stand to take myself. Just getting into a routine of always working every day on your project, and that way every day is progress, no matter what amount and on what.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, budgeting time for anything is always a good idea, whether it's working in the garage or, I'm trying to budget time to read every day, things like that. But, I kind of like the start at the start, or should say I don't. I mean, I usually try to start at the end. I always put my newly finished interior in first, then repaint the car, then pull the engine, and just make sure that I do everything that can mess up all the good stuff. No.
I can imagine that beautifully finished car sitting on the rusty, crappy, unrestored chassis waiting for attention.
Yes, it's exactly the way to do it.
Yeah.
No, I guess it's kind of hard. I will say, I'm not good enough right now at budgeting time. I know that's what I need to do is budget an evening, or budget evenings to. Now that we're back from that break, budget evenings to go out and work in the garage and get on projects. But I will say the one thing that I do have on that list that keeps me pretty well motivated, but not as much as I think I would like to, is the support system. I don't really have a support system in person here where I live. There's not really a lot of people down here into really early cars that I've found. But fortunately, I have a number of people in my phone that we like to text each other. And, we do go back and forth, with what we're doing on projects. And that kind of helps motivate because you don't want to be the guy that isn't ever texting about some kind of progress you made. And so that one helps keep me motivated. And in the summers, especially when the weather's nice down here, and the kids can be outside running around and goofing off, they like coming in the barn and sitting in the cars and, seeing the joy in them kind of helps me push me forward to get the cars done to a point where we can take them out and drive them and they can go for a ride and do all that. So I think the support system is probably the biggest thing for me, whether it's the text messages and phone calls and things, or the family, the support system of the kids always wanting to go for a ride or always wanting to sit in a car or always wanting, something with one of the cars. So um, right now, that's what keeps me motivated.
I think I agree with you on that one too, Derek. Out of looking at the 6 choices on the list and the situation, it's a support system. I mean, even this podcast kind of keeps me motivated to stay in the automotive realm. And then people who hear the podcast and talk to me about it, and, just meeting up with you guys every Thursday night, basically to have 60 minutes to kind of chat about cars and whatever. And that's why we went to this new format without a topic and just kind of randomly talk about various things like we would if we were at a bar having a beer, the way the original concept of no driving gloves. That support
You
system
know what, John?
helps.
Can I jump in? Can I jump in real quick? Because I have an idea on that. For our live listeners slash viewers, maybe we should start something where they come on, when they're watching here every week, and in the comments section, they update us on things they're doing. Give us some
I'd love
motivation through what you're doing.
Well, that's kind of where I want to go with it. I've got a whole bunch of things planned to improve the podcast. I guess we'll use this as a little podcast promotion. The audio releases will begin next week. I'm taking a bunch of time off next month to free up. I'm just overwhelmed with a lot of what I have to do. So I'm taking some time next month to try to reduce some of this overwhelmingness. And surprise, I left my position at the cigar shop today. So that frees up my Sundays for side hustle business stuff, the new venture I'm starting, and the podcasting and that. So we should be able to have a lot more things going on. We are going to develop a Patreon with content for people that want to contribute and find value in what we're bringing them. And then we'll be here free for you every week to listen to and talk to. And I would love to hear what the listeners are doing. Maybe I could even set up some sort of little forum or some little where you can just drop us a note and we can say, hey, Jason's up to this week, or he went out looking at this and, he picked up his whatever, or, Brad's doing this, or, just, keep our listeners informed, because what I'm looking for in the starting the business thing is we've had Tony Watley on here, who is a superb business coach. And I love what Tony Watley teaches. And I understand everything he says. And he makes me very much aware in that support system that for me to really get things done, I have to have an accountability coach. And I think coming here every week, if you want some motivation to do some things, Derek and Dave, if you want some, we should finish up the show saying, hey, these are our projects this week, whether it's not car related, business related, whatever. These are our projects. This is what we got accomplished. And maybe that'll be an after show that's available on Patreon. But it's, like I said, that support system and that accountability coach, I think, is very important. And I really have some big plans for No Driving Gloves and growing it. We had some talks over the winter, and I said, I'm only going to do it if certain goals are met. And finally, after 6 weeks of doing this, we've got some of the first reporting back, and we're meeting the goals. And we also found out we're a top 50 one of the top 50 automotive podcasts out there, according to Feedbot.
Heck yeah.
So,
and if a fair warning, if the plans don't work, we're going to start an OnlyFans account. But
yeah.
it's literally going to be, it's literally only going to be pictures of radiator, engine fans in various cars, and you have to identify what car it is based on the fan.
Oh, I thought we were going to partner with my friends over at Alabama Soda Blasting, where their motto is strip it naked. And we're going to just do videos of them soda blasting cars.
No, just if it's only, we could do an OnlyFans account where they strip the fans of the cars.
We could do that.
Like, hey, I like Chevy Vegas. Get him.
Or antique fans, ceiling fans, any fan that you want. We will have John's friend strip it bare.
Strip it naked.
Sorry, strip it naked for the right amount of money.
Actually, what's really shocking is when the guy with the sandblaster comes out and all he's wearing is gloves and a mask.
I tried that once.
Finding sand places for weeks. I'll bet. Yeah. You're thinking skin is easy cleanup, but it
Ah.
doesn't work that way.
Going out in the full bodysuit with the duct tape sleeves and the helmet and that, I'm still pulling out sand from sandblasting 20 years ago.
It's amazing how deep a belly button is.
It is. I'm an innie.
Sometimes.
When you get to a certain point in life, if you enjoy food, I think we all become an innie.
It takes us back to the beginning of the show where I was an outie.
Oh,
For those of you late joiners, guess you're going to have to go back and listen.
I've already forgotten the beginning of the show, so hey, I got to go back and listen.
I can't remember what I had for breakfast.
What's breakfast?
I think I had 2 Milano cookies.
For some reason, I was waiting for you to say martinis.
Okay. I'm just going to jump on to the next one here.
I don't know. Yeah.
Who's the biggest villain in U.S. automotive history?
So I had an idea in mind when I put this on the list of a particular
I knew
guy.
you did.
Yeah, but I don't want to like prejudice anybody, so I'll go last.
Oh, that's just unfair. I wanted to hear Dave's hot take.
You really? I mean, it's because it's not your typical like, you know. I chose Frederick Smith, who is the guy that was behind essentially forcing Ransom Olds out of Oldsmobile because Olds wanted to build a high volume car, and Smith was old money Michigander from the lumbering industry. Hadn't even made the money. It was, he was the son of the guy who made the money, and they bought up the business as investors and forced out the founder because they had a different vision, and then ended up becoming a division of General Motors in the process. And Smith worked at that for a while and really didn't gain any notoriety, but if you look at him, he just looks smug, and he would make the perfect villain if you wanted to tell a story about the horseless carriage age in Detroit, and you didn't want to do the typical Henry Ford invented the automobile in 1896 in conjunction with Charles Brady King. So anyway, yeah, Frederick Smith, guy who stole Olds from Olds. That's my guy.
Rock on. I've not revisited that story in many years. As you started talking about it, it all came back to me as to who he was. And yeah, that's one of those kind of ambiguous stories within the early industry. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it was wild. It was like Silicon Valley, but the machines were cooler.
That's
Neil
true.
wants to know what the definition is of an auto villain, and I would say, but the definition I had in mind was just some notorious bad actor from automotive history that takes the cake. It could be Roger Smith. Something about guys named Smith in the auto industry, but Roger Smith who gutted Detroit, or everybody's favorite punching bag, the anti-Semitic and anti-labor Henry Ford, or Alfred Sloan, who hired up, the people who did tetraethyl lead and Freon and all of that nasty stuff. I mean, who's your villain? And let's keep it historical, so nobody within the last 25 years.
What do you got, John?
I was going to look up the name, but I think you can probably give the name, but I don't know if it's a villain. I guess I keep thinking, and I just.
Well, nobody's a villain in their own story, right? But so it's always.
I want to say who was the person that founded the Dale, created the Dale?
Oh, Liz
they-
Carmichael.
Yes, were they a villain? I mean, they cheated people out of tons and tons and tons of money, but is that, yes, that's wrong, but is that wrong in our villainous sense?
Is it cool enough to be villainous, or is it just petty crime in large?
Well, no, I think the story, man, that's a hard one. I think the story could make them villainous. Of course, at the time, I think they would have just wanted to have been known as a she, but I'm not sure. I think she just went by she. If you don't know the story of Liz Carmichael, Dave, Liz was a transgendered person and a con artist who had a serious record of being a con artist, so much so of even being chased down by the Treasury Department and Secret Service due to printing fake money. And she is the one that convinced. Wow, I'm blinking on his last name. Dale. How can I blank on his last name when we have the car at the museum? Dale Clift. There we go. Clift commuter cycle. Dale Clift. That she wanted to take his commuter cycle idea and turn it into a production 3-wheel car that would, in her own words, kick Detroit's ass. And her actual end goal was to basically con a bunch of investors out of a whole lot of money and disappear.
Yeah.
Oh, so Preston Tucker.
I honestly don't think Preston Tucker.
I mean, Preston Tucker a little bit. He
would never have disappeared. He had too
good
much ego to
intentions.
disappear.
Well, yeah, and I think he had some good intentions behind what he was doing. Liz Carmichael's only intentions were to get money out of people and disappear. So,
if you want to get
And
into
did she
that,
disappear, or did she come to justice? What happened?
she disappeared for a number of years, and she wound up, interestingly enough, disappeared so much so that there was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Y'all remember Unsolved Mysteries?
Oh yeah, I loved
Mhm.
Unsolved Mysteries.
So there was an episode with the story of Liz Carmichael on it. And that is what got her caught, because the small town she was living in, one of the residents recognized her and called law enforcement, and they showed up and arrested her. And you'll never guess what little town in Texas she was living in.
I don't know any little towns in Texas. Shamrock.
Dale, Texas.
Oh, had she picked it
Mhm.
intentionally?
I have no idea.
now, if you want to know a little bit more about the Dale, this is just a plug. The Lady in the Dale is a four-part documentary on Elizabeth Carmichael on HBO. I don't know if it's currently on HBO or Max, but it came out in January of 2021, and that
Mhm.
really fills in a lot of that Dale story for any of our listeners who want to dive a little bit deeper into the Dale.
And if you
But-
want to know about the good guy in the story, Dale Clift, just visit Lake Motor Museum, because we have the Clift commuter cycle and a lot of the archive records around what Liz Carmichael did to him. So we even have the bounced check receipt and the some of the documents that she gave him when she conned him into doing the whole situation.
And you have a couple examples of the production Dale automobile, right?
No, we do not. We do not have a Dale.
Oh, I was thinking in the
anybody know?
original invisible paint
You're
jobs.
you're thinking of the Davis. We have 2 Davis cars. We have the Davis Baby and the number 6 car. Yep.
If disappearing classifies you as evil, then this might cost us a guest if we ever reached out to him and asked him to be a guest. But if you talk to a very famous race car driver who might be a representative of a new Formula One team, there is a firm belief that Colin Chapman never did die and escaped to live with Elvis and Kennedy in Venezuela or somewhere in South America because he had embezzled somewhere between 10 and 15 million dollars in the DeLorean event. Enough to the point that Chapman's CFO ended up actually serving prison time. And the judge said that if Chapman was here, he would be getting like double the amount of years or whatever. But was Chapman evil because he ended up defrauding the, it's not US, but it ties to DeLorean because he defrauded the British government out of millions of dollars in the early 80s and then potentially didn't die and skipped the country. Does that make him evil?
I mean, Her Majesty's government probably felt so.
A lot of people felt so. It's one reason he was never knighted or honored in any of the ways that a lot of the big name automotive people came out.
So the that thought flew away. Never mind.
All right. Well, then I'll throw out my selection for the greatest villain in U.S. automotive history. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present George B. Selden and the Selden family.
Oh, the patent troll of history.
Yes.
Brilliant choice.
Oh, he's just an opportunist.
Aren't all villains?
So that makes the hero in this story
Henry Ford.
Who arguably is one of the most villainous people in history.
The final boss villain, as Neil says in the comments.
There you go.
Can automakers?
But what does that say about George? But what does that say about George Selden if, Henry Ford, who was a villain, was the good guy in the story?
That either Selden was himself a good guy and just misunderstood and could have protected us from the effects of the mass market automobile being handed out willy-nilly to the working class, or he was an even worse villain that the final boss villain of automotive history had to take him out because even the heroes, the people, the good and light and sweet people like David Dunbar Buick and Billy Durant could not take him on because they were too weak in their goodness.
But if you look at Sloan, and like we've said, Henry Ford took him on and defeated him. Wasn't Sloan doing basically what Henry Ford's good friend Thomas Edison was doing? Trying to patent and take credit for other people's inventions?
I mean, by that point in industrial history, if you worked for a company, patent assignment was a pretty routine thing, and it remains so. So, I mean, given the ethics of the time, no. It depends on what you feel about that system at the heart of it.
Well, or what about the whole planned obsolescence, right? The idea of model changes every 3 years, roughly, which is what took GM ahead of Ford in the last years of the Model T.
There's business law from that era that's still controlling, and it basically says your one and only interest is to the shareholders. You know that line from The Incredibles, but Bob, think of the shareholders. Who's looking out for their interests? I mean, that's literally how it works to be a corporate officer in America. So, like, yeah, it was kind of him fulfilling his duty. Now, whether or not we think that's a villainous impulse is kind of a matter of public policy discussion, even unto this day. But I don't think there's anything quite in Sloane's character that makes him villainous, except in maybe a kind of like evil is very bland and routine sort of way, which is a literary trope, although I don't know if it's one that we embrace so much in reality. Although supposedly Adolf Eichmann, to draw a really extreme parallel, is the same thing, just a colorless bureaucrat who did what he was supposed to do with extreme efficiency. It just happened that what he was supposed to be doing efficiently was sending people to their deaths in an industrialized sort of way. And the 3 year model change and the treadmill of consumerism is perhaps not as bad as that, although it definitely has had long term effects that we're still dealing with.
Well, if Sloan would have defeated Henry Ford, we could go into Neil's last comment and talking about evil things that have happened in automobile subscriptions, because Sloan could have then pulled the patent from BMW and prevented them from building cars until they got rid of the.
Well, it sounds like you're conflating Sloan and Selden here.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
would
you
say
meant Selden.
Sloan definitely did beat Henry Ford, but yeah, no, Ford beat Selden pretty squarely. Well, or did he? No, I think actually Henry Ford lost the Selden suit, even though he broke the power.
No, he lost it on the trial. He won,
and then won on appeal.
On appeal, yes, and because that's when he built the Selden patent car replica that's at Henry Ford, and took a model. I'm trying to remember if it was a Model A or a Model C, and put a Lenore engine, the French Lenore engine, in it, to prove that there were different ways to do the internal combustion engine, and you cannot, you can't have one patent go basically, oversee all internal combustion design. The Lenore engine was different. The Selden was way different because it was a Brayton cycle engine. And then, Henry had an auto cycle engine. So that's where Henry kind of won his case, was my car is built different than the Lenore engine, and I've put that in one of my cars now, so you can see how that's different. And I've built the replica of the never built Selden patent car to show you how different it is. And that's what he eventually won on, was that, yes, a patent, there's a percentage, you might know the number, Dave, is it like 10% or so? You have to prove a certain amount of difference, and you can, not violate a patent.
Yeah, I wasn't a patent attorney. I remember hearing that stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will throw out one more name.
Okay,
and
wait. I want to make one more point
Okay,
about the Selden case. I want to hear this because I'm really curious. But I want to ask: was the ALA, which was sort of the company body, which with which Frederick Smith was involved, actually, was the ALA? Yeah, sorry, Association of Licensed Auto Manufacturers, ALAM. Were they an evil body, or were they actually a good voluntary regulatory body within private industry? Because they claimed that they were keeping the standards for auto construction high by limiting the number of licenses that they permitted, or were they just there to make money by skimming everybody else's profits as patent trolls? What was the actual function of the ALAM when it was powerful?
That's a good question. I don't know that I've ever. Everybody always talks about Selden and his grab and all of that. I don't know. I've never really dug that deep into the people that were involved in the ALAM, and if they were just in on the idea of trying to control this and make all the money with Selden, or if they actually had good intention.
Because it would seem like it's possible they were actually good on some level, um, unless your purpose was entirely to build a volume business selling something as cheaply as possible, which is the Henry Ford model. And it would be an interesting world we lived in today if cars were much more expensive and still basically a thing that only middle class professionals and up owned, and everybody else kind of rode the bus, as it were.
Isn't that kind of the way it is?
I was kind of thinking it's quickly going that way.
Isn't that kind of where we are?
Well, and it is sort of the natural state of human history, if you look at it. I mean, people having 60-mile-an-hour, 4,000-pound conveyances is essentially a 1945 and up phenomenon.
I did read an article this week that manufacturers have realized cars are too expensive.
Yeah, they're going to do something about it?
I don't think they have a choice.
Nah, okay. So,
all right, so Eric, who's the last one? Yeah.
The last one, and possibly I may need to retract my earlier statement, because this man may be the most villainous man in automotive history. Harry Bennett.
The trumpeter?
No. The head of Ford Security.
Oh, Henry Ford. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh. That Harry Bennett.
The Union Buster.
I mean, he was more like a skull buster. He just busted whoever Henry wanted busted.
Exactly.
Well, that makes John Bugas the hero, since he's the one that cleaned him out.
Well, I guess it goes back to history, because I don't think he was much different than, and I can't think of the gentleman's, I'm just calling him a gentleman is probably a joke. There was a foreman at Sloss Furnaces here in Birmingham, and Sloss is supposedly one of the most haunted places on the planet. And there was a foreman there that was just brutal to his people. I don't know if he technically went quite as far as Bennett did, but beating people to death and accidents and that were known to happen around him until, unfortunately, for some odd reason, for the only time in his life that he ever climbed above one of the steel vats, or one of the vats of molten steel, he slipped and fell into it.
That's weird.
Yeah, just the only time he ever did that happened. But he supposedly is still there, and there's been hauntings where he, like a security guard, I can't remember what year, was walking through and then was all of a sudden, pushed down a flight of stairs, he said, and ended up with second and third degree burns over 90% of his body, even though there was no fire. He later died of it. So this guy could even be, more evil than Bennett. And it's not automotive related, except you consider the steel, because he's still effing with people to this day. But
why would I not be shocked to learn that Harry Bennett actually haunts some part of the Rouge? I could see that.
Oh,
he didn't die there.
Sure. Did he die there?
He did not die at the Rouge. No, that would have been great if he died in a shootout with John Bugas. I'm not coming with you, you coppers.
If anything that the show Ghosts has taught us, you haunt where you died, and very few ghosts have the ability to go other places.
So die someplace that's going to stay interesting.
And don't die anywhere boring.
Well, on that note,
I would say before we wrap up, I'm going to be vague here, And Derek, you can go with it, but you had a post about something that's happening somewhere. And kind of, do you know what I'm talking about from yesterday? And I don't know how to say
The
it to
Toronto
you,
Auto,
but-
or the Canadian Auto Show.
No, it's museum related and museum expansion related and new horseless carriage related.
Oh, the Museum of the Horseless Carriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, you had posted something about it, and if you wanted more information, I don't know if you wanted to give us any little information that you know about what's going on there for people who are unaware of what's happening.
Oh, what an awkward way to get into that conversation, John. Wonderful job.
Hey. Well, I didn't want to say too much if you didn't want to say anything about it.
No,
thought
we're
you were
very
cool,
open.
Roger.
I'm on the board. I'm actually the treasurer of the board for the
Can I have some
Museum
money?
of the Horseless Carriage. That's the exact question we are asking people. Neil, yes, let's do Automotive Heroes on the next episode. We can do that. But no, we're just, I posted on Facebook. We had one of our board meetings last night. Yesterday was a very long day for me. And, we're trying to build a museum for the history of the horseless carriage at the Gilmore Car Museum up in Hickory Corners, Michigan. So if anybody that listens to No Driving Gloves wants to help support that effort, maybe after you give a little love to the No Driving Gloves show, feel free to reach out. Be happy to connect you with our team and hopefully raise a little money to make that happen. We're on a good head of steam right now, so we're making some big steps, and we want to see this thing done. So, that's what that's all about. I got way too much going on in life, involved in too many things.
Yeah, and Neil, be sure to join us next week so you can participate in the conversation on Automotive Heroes. I've already added it to the list of things to attempt to talk about. It's number 2 on the list, and I don't know if we'll actually get to number 1. So,
All right. Well, I
Is it
can't
time
wait to
to-
see everybody next week.
Spoiler alert. We won't have time to get to number 1, but the hosts of No Driving Gloves are the greatest automotive heroes in history. So,
well, one of the 3.
thank you, John. So nice.
Is it time to tell these people to get off their ass and go burn some gas?
Good night, Gracie.
After we tell them to share the show with their friends.
Okay. We keep sharing it. We're number 31, I think it is, on that list, and top 70 automotive podcasts. Our YouTube numbers are up. Our Facebook numbers are up. Our listeners are up. Hey, keep telling them, everybody. Okay, at that point,
Now we're going.
Get off your ass. Go burn some gas, because as soon as I can find the cursor, we are out.